Hey, we're back. Here we are. It's Law 2020 brought to you by your friends in the offices of the BCN law firm. That's Boyette, Cummins, and Nalos. I've been seeing this guy on TV all this week. It's been like I haven't even missed you because you've been on my TV everywhere, buddy. And I got Wade Boyette in here, and he's doing a lot of bankruptcy commercials right now. But one of the things we're going to do today is open up the phone lines to legal questions, 855-297-9696. Text us at 21232. The BCN law firm has offices in Winter Park, Claremont, Lakeland, and they have offices in the Villages on 466, okay? BCNlawfirm.com. You can always reach them during the week for a few minutes of free consultation. 855-LAW-2020 is the number. That's 855-529-2020, 529-2020. And if you've been looking around Orlando, you've noticed that the monster mega stores are getting fewer, and the small businesses are increasing at a phenomenally good economic rate. A lot of people have lost their jobs or were downsized in companies, and they're finding they can open their own company, and they're all doing pretty darn good if they follow a lot of rules. You may be the best carpenter in the world. You may be the best appliance guy in the world. But you got to know your marketing, got to get all your licenses, you got to get your insurance, and you've got to know the legal side of it. And there's 10 big mistakes that businesses make, Wade Boyette tells me. I'm interested to find out what those are.
That's great, Rob. What and hopefully we'll get through all 10 today. If not, we'll cover the rest of them on next Sunday. Mm-hmm. But, you're right. I sort of follow trends and try to hit the legal trends. And so many owners of small businesses or potential owners are coming in getting legal advice now. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing, with the economy picking back up, and it has been doing that for years, you're seeing a lot of people coming in. I think I reviewed 3 franchise agreements last week where people are looking at becoming new franchisees or looking at starting some businesses that they thought up themselves. And so, what I wanted to do is try to go over some mistakes that I see new business owners make. And I wrote down a list of 10 mistakes that I see most business owners making who have not been in business for themselves for a while. Mm-hmm. And the first one is, right up front, having a clear understanding of, what you want your business organization to look like. If you're a sole proprietor, it's a little bit easier. And I say a sole proprietor, I'm using that term loosely. If you're a single business owner, and we'll talk about the different forms of business in a few minutes. But if you're not, and a lot of my clients that come in, they come in with a partner. And a partnership in a business is like a marriage. It has got to be thought about up front. If you don't go into it with a clear understanding, you're just destined for failure. And so the first mistake I see business owners make are not having a very clear understanding right up front about how this co-ownership should work. Mm-hmm.
And these are things that I guess it's almost like a honeymoon marriage when people sit down and they have a few coffees or a few lattes or beers. And, hey, Wade, you and I are going to go into business. We're going to open up a flower store because we know everybody in Central Florida, and we're going to sell them flowers, and we're best buddies. And in about a year, then things start falling apart. Or maybe I get an opportunity to go back into the broadcasting business, and you want to go back to your law firm. Well, who buys what? Who owns what? What is what?
And I see that. I'll give you an example without mentioning the business but what I see, a person came in, I was looking at a franchise agreement, and this is what usually happens. One person has the expertise. Someone else has the money.
Oh, boy.
So, and then, it's the person with the money is excited because they're hoping to make more money. The person with the expertise is having an opportunity. They found someone who has the funds to help them live out their dream. And it's all great until a year later when the person that has the expertise says, I'm doing all the work. But the person who gave me the money to start off now is making as much money as I am. They start having some issues. Mm-hmm. And that's when it falls apart. You got to define those roles right up front. What are you going to do on a daily basis, monthly basis, semi-annual basis, or a yearly basis? What are your roles? Who's going to make the decisions? Who's going to have the ability to go and pledge assets, buy assets, take out loans. There's a lot of decisions that you need to make right up front.
Mm-hmm. And how about the family dynamic that might enter into it? One of the guys is married, the other one isn't. Let's just play that scenario out for a minute. Okay, and then man A, who's got the wife, decides to get divorced, and all of a sudden, does she own part of that company or does she not? Or where does this all play out?
And she could own part of that business. And what I do, and again, that's having that clear understanding up front. Mm-hmm. Anytime you go into a business and you read and you go out and read on starting a business, one of the first things they do is any good business owner, not only do they think about starting it, but they think about exiting the business right up front. Mm-hmm. And exiting can take so many different shapes. One of them is through a divorce or through a death. What we do right up front when we form a business for a client, whatever type of business that is, we'll also talk about doing a buy-sell agreement or an agreement that will address those issues. What we do usually is we have the wives sign an agreement that immediately says if there's a divorce or if there's a death, they waive their interest in the business. So we know that right up front. If they're unwilling to do that, then we know that up front also.
Mm-hmm. And I just look at so many of the dynamics, like, and I'm sure you'll get to them in your list of 10 there, like insurances and what happens upon death. Where do things go? Right. You know, who owns what?
Yeah, and we talk about estate planning often here on the show, and that's very important. And if you don't address that issue, you could end up with a family member, a friend, or someone that you really don't want as your business partner. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of businesses fail that way. If someone else comes in that you're not really willing to be a partner with, and they don't have the same decision-making ability or the same expertise that someone else did, and it fails.
What are some of the biggest things you found in a franchise contract that you've said to people, yeah, that company puts this in there every time, and you ain't going to live with that provision long as I'm your attorney?
Well, here's I'm always a straight shooter, Rob. The problem with franchise agreements is it's your privilege to be a franchisee. They don't change franchise agreements very often.
Right.
You know, what I usually do with a franchise agreement is I read it and help the client understand what they're getting into. Mm-hmm. Because anytime I've gone to a franchisor and said, look, I don't like these provisions, and that's been quite often, the response I get usually is, well, too bad. Don't buy the franchise.
Yeah.
And so, you're not going to change the franchise agreement very often, but you need to clearly understand the franchise agreement before you get into it.
Do your services and your suggestions, your relationship with the client also get into copyrights, licensing, that sort of thing? And if that's already on the list, I'm sorry. Yep. And also negotiating leases. When I was in the shopping center industry, I saw businesses destroyed because they didn't read their lease.
Yeah, I think you hit number 3 and number 8 on the list. So you're good.
God dang it.
You're good. But those are all issues. Absolutely. So, one of the first things is, make sure you have a clear understanding right up front. Let's sit down and work out all those daily issues. Who's putting the money in? Who's doing the work? Who has the ability to sign the checks? Who has the ability to hire, fire? I mean, all of those issues need to be addressed up front. Let's get down and let's talk about one of the things, intellectual property rights. And this is becoming one of the hottest topics in the legal profession, is protecting your intellectual property. And it is it's an amazing area of law. It's wide open.
Okay, when we come back, we'll talk about, he'll actually explain what that means, because there's a lot of people, you need to know the legalities of your ideas, of your product lines. You need to know all that. Also, we do have a text, and we'll get to that text as well right when we come back. Here's 3 big things you need to know. What is intellectual property? We're going to get to that. These are the 10 big mistakes people make when they start their own business, or you hitch up a franchise to make you the next fast food king or whatever it's going to be, or mechanic or whatever. This is Law 2020, brought to you by your good friends at the BCN Law Firm. I was so moved. I've been doing these shows 31 years on this station, and I was really moved when you asked me to do this show because I have a lot of respect for you out there in the community because I've known you and your law acquiescence for a long time. All right, how do you get a hold of the BCN Law Firm? BCN, that is Boyette, Cummins, and Nalos, BCNlawfirm.com. Winter Park, Claremont, Lakeland, and the Villages, all accessible with one easy number, 855-LAW-2020. You can sing the song if you like. That's 855-529-2020. And Wade Boyette is with us. And first of all, I want to get this text out of the way, and I think you're going to answer it with a two-letter word. I made a $200,000 loan during my marriage to pay my wife's credit cards. If she gets alimony as we separate and get a divorce, will this money be considered by the bank or by the courts?
Well, the simple answer is no, and I'll tell you why. When you paid off the loan, you were married. Alimony is post-marriage, and unless you negotiated in your settlement agreement when you got divorced that the alimony was reduced by those payments, that's not going to happen. So, you did her a nice favor by paying off. That's a sizable amount of credit card debt, so she probably loves you for it.
Or not.
Or not.
Or not. Okay, we started talking about one of the items on the 10 biggest mistakes people make is maybe 100 years ago there was no such thing as intellectual property. Now it's a very big deal with social media, with all the advertising, with everything that you do, and new ideas that come out all the time that are often proprietary.
Absolutely. And I will talk briefly about, copyright, trademark, and patent issues, and then also talk about having a good term of use and privacy policy agreement for your website, because both of those things are very, very important in business. Let's just talk about a very simple, rudimentary. Again, we're starting the idea of we're forming this business. One of the first things I ask my clients is, what's the name of your business going to be? And they throw out this name, and they're real proud of it, and they usually think they're being creative or innovative. And then we start doing a search, and it's out there in use. Or what happens is clients come in, and they haven't done that search, and they're bringing this letter in to me that says, I'm being sued by some company because I used the name and I didn't know I shouldn't be using it. One of my good friends, and he won't mind me talking about this, he started a real estate company 8 or 10 years ago. And at that time, we were going to call a business 21st Century Homes. Sounded great to us,
Yeah.
Until Century 21 sent us this nice cease and desist letter saying if you don't change the name of your business, you're going to have some major issues. And he came in and he said, Wade, what should I do? Well, you changed the name of your business. Unfortunately, Century 21 has a little more money to fight this than you do. So we're going to change the name of the business. And we changed the name of the business. Be very careful before you choose a business name. And I'm going to give you a couple of tips. The first thing that you need to do is the state has a website called SunBiz. SUNBIZ, sunbiz.org. It's the state site for all the corporate LLC and partnership filings. And you can go on and see if there is someone using that name in Florida. So if you're going to be a Florida corporation, that's the first step you do. You just go on to sunbiz.org, you search the name, see if it's available there. Also, you can search the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office site, and that's uspto.gov.
Mm-hmm.
Go on those two sites, search and make sure, just doing that rudimentary search, that the names are available. If they are, then there's a very good chance we can go in then and file the company for you if we're going to do a Florida corporation or a Florida LLC or partnership. And then we also can trademark federally that name.
Mm-hmm. There were some cases here in Florida when you talk about intellectual property that a number of people who worked for one of the major big name barbecue companies left that barbecue company. And they were all, shall we say, managers of local outlets. And they were then presented with letters. You're not allowed to use our recipes. What in the world are you doing?
And, if those recipes are protected, you can get in some serious trouble using those recipes. As we know, a gentleman here with us who's a photographer taking pictures of us now.
Right.
If you remember, he took
about 6 weeks ago.
6 or 8 weeks ago, someone was using some photographs he had taken of menu items. That's
right.
a no-no. If that's his work product, you cannot take his work product and use it. So
now, does he have to do any measures like copyright those or put anything in writing that this is mine?
You do. You have to at least do a common law trademark or do some type of copyright work just to protect your work product.
Mm-hmm. And is that for every single picture?
And let me go back, Rob. There is a presumption if you're a photographer, no one can use your original work.
Oh, okay.
Even if it's online, if you can establish that. So that, you can't do that. Let's talk about one other thing. We talked about the name and going to Sunbiz, and we talked about going to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Let's say you come up with a great name and it's available, but then you go and you try to create a website using that name, and now you found someone else has that name already. I'll give you an example. I would love to have law2020.com, but it's not available. A company in Japan has it. I'm hoping they don't renew in June or July. Mm-hmm. But right now, there's no way to get Law 2020.
Are there people that, like in the radio business, there are companies out there that will apply for licenses in every city in the United States, but never build the radio station?
Absolutely.
But when you go after that license, you have to pay them a residual or pay them off.
Or buy it.
It's legal blackmail is what it is. But are there people that just go around and just take domain names and just buy them all?
They attempt to do that. They buy as many as they can and then turn around and put them out for sale. And it's a business for some companies and some people. What I recommend go to GoDaddy, search the name. Not only can you search the name, but you can find out who owns the domain name if it's not available, and you can try to acquire it. So, those are just little things that you need to do when you're thinking about starting a business. Mm-hmm. Come up with that creative name. Make sure you can use that creative name, and then make sure you can market that name effectively.
I probably wouldn't get past the cover. Those of you that know their materials know what I'm talking about. Right. Okay, we're coming up to the bottom of the hour, and we're going to be talking about more of the things. And if you have a business, or if you're thinking of starting a business, you don't have to use that business. You don't have to tell us what it is in case you're afraid it's a secret. But go ahead and give us a call at 855-297-9696, 855-297-9696. Call us, and you can ask Wade any questions about anything that you want as far as setting up a business. How would you do it? What are the common mistakes? Those are the ones we're covering. Or if you made a mistake, you don't have to use your real name, but you can say, hey, my name's Tim, and you wouldn't believe what I did. I lost $1 million. Hey, we will be back right here on News 96.5. There you go. Hey, this is our Ask the Expert series, and you power it. It's your calls that make it happen. All right? 855-297-9696, 855-297-9696. You can text us at 21232. I know that 90% of America's got their eyes glued to the TV right now for the college football selection, but do what we do. We can see it, but we turn the sound down so we can hear about legal matters. If you've got a legal question, give us a call. And we are highlighting right now information on the 10 biggest mistakes people make when they're trying to set up a small business. And you may be really, really chomping the bit to get a new business going next year, but there's an awful lot of things you need to think of, not just your great idea. 855-297-9696. Text us at 21232. David, I'm glad you called the show. We want to thank you for taking time out of your busy weekend, but how can Wade Boyette of the BCN law firm help you?
Hi, Counselor. Thank you for taking my call. The only question I have is we're coming up with starting a new business next year. And my question to you is this. If we buy the domain name, we buy the app for it, do we need to copyright or trademark that name as well? Or would that be known as, first come, first serve? I started the business, bought the domain name, etc.
No, just because you own the domain name doesn't mean you own the name. That's just for the domain itself. I would definitely look at also, in addition to just having the domain name, look at that website, uspto.gov, which is the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office site, and make sure it has not been trademarked. So make sure you're not going to violate anything there.
Okay, David?
Okay.
And David, if you have additional questions, because there's a lot involved with dealing with trademark issues, just shoot me a email at wboyette@bcnlawfirm.com, and I'll be glad to walk you through it.
Will do. Thank you, Counselor.
Hey, thanks, David.
Okay, very good. What else did we have?
All right. One of the next things, and we're just going to cover this briefly because we've had a show on this topic before, which is choosing the correct organizational form. So many people, they just hear, they come into my office, I want to form a corporation. I want to form an LLC. I want to form a partnership. And then when I ask, why do you want to form an LLC? Well, my neighbor has an LLC, or this other business is an LLC, or this business is a corporation. And you have to really think of, why are you forming one type of entity over? Why are you creating your business under one structure versus another structure? Mm-hmm. And there's so many issues that go into it, from tax issues to, I'll have clients that come in and they'll say, Wade, we're going to be a corporation, but we don't want double taxation. We can't be a C Corp. We want to be an S Corp. Okay, let's talk about it. Who are your partners? Well, I've got this one gentleman, he's not a U.S. citizen. He lives in Europe. Well, right there, they can't be an S corporation, because that's one of the qualifications. You have to have all U.S. citizens. So it's one of those things. We need to make sure when we create your business, we create it using the right structure, the right organizational form.
Mm-hmm. And do you walk them through the processes of the city licensing, the state licensing, all the things that the hoops they've got to jump through for government?
I do. I will help them. What I do is I tell all my new business owners, I don't want to put you in financial stress right off the bat. So I don't want all your money that was going to go for startup capital going to legal fees. So if I can give you advice so that you can walk through some of those things yourself and not have to pay me to do it, I'm going to do that. Mm-hmm. What I'm going to try to do is, if you're paying me, I want it to be beneficial, and I want it to help you put $1 in your pocket.
Mm-hmm. So where does we were talking about intellectual property and of course talking about permits and things that you've got to do. One of the things you're going to want to do is set up a bank account. Now there's an awful lot of people who their DBA is not the same as the bank account name.
Absolutely.
So how does that all work? What is that?
Well, you can have a business. For example, I could have a corporation that's Wade Boyette Inc., but I do business as BCN Law Firm. So the name, the legal name of my business may not be the same business I'm operating under. And again, if you go to that website, sunbiz.org, you can look at fictitious names, or the DBAs, as well as the legal names.
And that's something that has to be filed in the newspaper? Is that still the realm?
You do. You still have to file it in the newspaper. You still have to register it with the state. So, you can have one business. I could have Wade Boyette Inc., DBA, 3 or 4 different business names. Mm-hmm. So, all you have to do is go file that fictitious name in the paper, publish it, file it with the Secretary of State.
And do banks still require that to open an account in Florida?
A lot of, the bank's going to want the legal name. And they're going to want your taxpayer identification number. That's what's critical, is getting that correct taxpayer identification number so they could have proper reporting with the IRS.
Mm-hmm. Where does I know an awful lot of guys who will set up a corporation, but they don't do it with the help of an attorney. They get some website, and they print off something, and then they're not doing it right, and they forget about something called the corporate meeting.
Absolutely. What I see, and a lot of my clients do, though, you can go on sunbiz.org, or you can go to these sites and set up, legally form the company. That's simple. That's a $100 filing fee, or whatever the current state filing fee is. Mm-hmm. And, to form a corporation in Florida, you have to have 5 things: a name, an address, and all. It's real simple to do. The problem is you don't think through these issues that we're talking about today.
Yeah.
And then, I'll give you an example. if you have a partnership or when I say a partnership, again, using that term loosely, more than one person with you in the business, if there becomes an issue between you don't have a contract that's going to address that. You don't have anything in place. If you get sued, you don't have bylaws to follow because you haven't done that. You haven't issued stock certificates. So why haven't you issued stock certificates? I mean, there's so many different things other than just filing the legal document with the Secretary of State.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, your list is really getting incredible. I don't know if we'll get through the whole thing.
We probably won't, and that's okay. That's all we have next week. Here's one of the things that I see people doing. So many of my clients come in and they have a great idea, wonderful idea, but they don't have the capital to fund it. My client and their best friend forms the company. And then they go running around trying to raise money. And one of the things they could do is they say, well, I'll make you an owner. I'll give you stock. I'll give you a part of the business if you invest this money. But what they don't realize is there's a lot of risk. If you don't do it correct, we have this thing called the Security and Exchange Commission. And they're pretty powerful, and those rules are pretty strict. And if you go out and start raising money without doing things correctly, then you're opening yourself up to litigation. We had to take a pause because I think we just figured out who the 4 teams were.
Yeah, why don't you announce that for the listeners? It's your show.
And so now we do know that Alabama, Oregon, Florida State, and the 4th team in is Ohio State. So, wow, that's a little, I thought TCU should be in there, but, what do I know?
So here's the way it's going to stack up. When they play the playoffs, Alabama will have to play Ohio State, Oregon, Florida State. The 2 winners will be this nation's arguably first national champion.
Pretty exciting stuff. Both are great games.
Brought to you by Dr. Pepper, by the way. I think we have to say that, don't we?
Yeah. So wonderful games. That's pretty exciting. So now everybody out there knows what we're actually doing right now.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of domain names and copyrights and intellectual property, it was about 3 or 4 years ago, just to tell you how important this is, folks, about 3 or 4 years ago, and they can't sue me for saying it because it's true, the Daytona 500 came out and said, if you own a big restaurant, a sports bar, you're not allowed to put big posters up or your billboards that say, come watch the Daytona 500. They own that name.
It is amazing.
You can't say Super Bowl. That is an owned name.
I just had one of my good friends, good clients. They downloaded some photographs off the internet for their website, big furniture company.
Yeah.
And they got a nice letter in the mail. It was about 80 pictures that they used on their website because they're also a furniture company. And they got a nice letter in the mail that says, those are our pictures. You owe us $350,000 for using those photographs.
Ouch.
Take them down, send us a check. And, that's a scary letter to get in the mail. And they're right. Mm-hmm. You do, we ended up having to settle that case, but it's a scary thing. You've got to be careful and you've got to protect your work product.
And in defense of the good people at the track, they were very nice about it. They just said, we own that name. The Daytona 500 isn't yours, it's ours. We own that name. And the Super Bowl committee makes it very clear to media people, you cannot use the name Super Bowl advertising a bar, advertising anything that isn't an official sponsor of the Super Bowl. Right. Now, as you and I can say the word all we want. We can say Daytona 500 all we want. Right. But we can't open a daycare and put Mickey Mouse on the wall.
That is right. And if you want to see someone who's tough, try to use Mickey Mouse on anything.
Yeah. Remember about 20 years ago, there was a bunch of daycares in this town, and they all had their walls with all the characters.
Oh, yeah.
And the first inquiry, as I understand it, word has it on the street, the first inquiry was very passive. We want you to take those off your walls. The second one was, let's get it done.
Yeah, that's so, and you get it done.
Yeah, I mean, you ain't going to fight the mouse, right? Hey, anyway, that's what it comes down to. But it can be something as simple as your name. Right. Maybe you've got Jack's Barbecue. You don't want somebody across town opening up Jack's Barbecue.
Every business starts off with the thought and hope to be successful. And if you become successful, your name, your images, your likeness has value.
God, yes.
Make sure you protect it.
Mm-hmm. And is that something that when we talk about selling the company, that you're selling not only blue sky, but you're selling that name and it's goodwill.
Absolutely. I mean,
That's
so many times that's where the value is. It's the name. It's the goodwill that someone's getting.
Very cool. Hey, when we come back, we're going to knock out some more of these things, but we'll also take your legal questions at 855-297-9696. This is all fun stuff. 855-297-9696 or text us to 21232. We'll be back. There you go. I want to thank our producer, Tim. He is one great producer. This guy pushes all the right buttons. He does this for the 6 o'clock news at night, and you know that is a busy time. So this guy's the best. Hey, Robert, you're on the line, and this is a question I think everybody wants to know that wants to open a business. What a great question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you had mentioned investors and people with good ideas getting together. And I was wondering what resource one might look to if someone had good ideas, like multiple good ideas, looking for someone that wanted to invest in those ideas.
Well, Robert, I mean, the first thing I would do is, start with family and friends. I mean, that's the easiest way to find an investor. Find someone who not only believes in your ideas, but will believe in you. And so that's the easiest way to find money. But then, going past that, there are things called angel funds here in Central Florida. Angel funds are a group of people who've pulled money together looking for great ideas to invest in. So go online and just Google angel funds of Central Florida, and you'll find several companies that they do exactly what you're talking about. They will sit down with you, listen to your idea, and if they believe it and is as passionate as you are about it, they may help throw some money your direction.
What is crowdfunding? I've been hearing all about that. If you read Flip magazine, almost every company that you see being started up in like webs and apps and stuff like that, and these are multi-million-dollar companies, were started with crowdfunding, and I don't understand what that is.
I'm not sure what crowdfunding is. I mean, but if they're those types of companies, it's probably one of these companies that are just, again, pooling money.
Yeah, I think they come up with seed money, just like that angel thing. Yeah, very cool. Here's a great one. Hey, I'm self-employed, subchapter S. I have not touched my corporate book in years, stocks, manuals, minutes. What's it going to take to clean this up, and how much time and how much money?
Yeah, two things.
Wow.
You're a subchapter S, so you're not self-employed. You're an employee of the company. So, that's the first thing is once you have a corporation, you're no longer self-employed. You're now an employee of the company, or you were an independent contractor of the company. To clean the corporate book up is pretty simple. We just need to sit down. We need to do some board minutes. One of the first things we do is usually draft some very simple board minutes and ratify all past acts. I mean, that's the first thing we say is anything we've done in the past, we ratify, we're good with. Then we need to make sure your stock is issued properly, that it's done. And then we need to make sure things coincide and work the way you've been reporting it to the IRS. Make sure your stock certificates match up with what you've been reporting to the IRS.
Okay, this is unrelated, but we said we'd help legally. I moved out of my apartment back in June. Since then, we've still not received our security deposit. I've contacted the regional offices, and also the bottom line is they haven't got their money back.
They haven't gotten their security deposit. If you're getting nowhere with the landlord and you feel like you are entitled to the security deposit back, you haven't breached the lease or you haven't done anything, or they haven't given you a reason that justifies them retaining the deposit, give me a call. We may have to, unfortunately, sometimes it takes a letter from someone that, says wake up, or, you may be responsible here. We may have to send one of those nasty letters, but give me a call and let me see if you are entitled to the deposit back, and let's go get it.
Okay. And does the landlord, is he apt by Florida law to send out a letter within so many days declaring this is what your deposit you're getting and what you're not?
Yeah, they're not allowed. They're not allowed to just hold your deposit forever. After a while, then the tenant has certain rights where they can go in, and what we may have the landlord do is we may end up filing an interpleader agreement. We may make the landlord stick the deposit with the court, and then we'll go to the court and fight it.
Let me go back to this funding question. If you do use a family member is it all that much more important that you get a document from an attorney that is written up so it's not a handshake, Uncle Jake gave me the money, because I've seen so many families that don't speak to each other anymore.
Absolutely. Whether you're dealing with family members, friends, or a third-party investor, you need to make sure it's absolutely clear. One, you need to make sure is what are their expectations? What return on investment are they anticipating? When do they anticipate being paid back? You would hate a year down the road, the investor says, I need my money, and you can't give it back to them. Mm-hmm. So you need to make sure everything is addressed right up front. Don't get overly excited that, wow, now I have my money, let's go. Make sure things are done correctly.
All right, very good. We're going to continue this conversation next week because it is a slippery slope, and you need to make sure that everything is done correctly. And I think the bottom line here today, folks, see an attorney and make sure that everything's going right before you invest your time, your expertise, and your money. The BCN Law Firm, you can get a hold of them this week at 855-LAW-2020, 855-529-2020, and offices Winter Park, Claremont, Lakeland, and a brand new office right there in the Villages. Call, and a few minutes of consultation is yours. Thank you, Wade. Good stuff today.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. I'll see you next Sunday.